What's up? How to start flipping houses as a beginner successfully, and I highlight successfully. See, in this business, you have to be war ready. Your ammunition stockpile needs to be large. Because there are many problems that come up in this business that you don't foresee. This video will explain 3 main keys that will help you successfully fix and flip a house. There is a part 2. Before we get into it, hit the subscribe and like button to get more content just like this. So, the number 1 reason why most investors fail is because a lack of preparation. So you watching this video must understand you have to prepare well in order to achieve a successful fix and flip. If your preparation isn't good, you will not have a successful fix and flip. Now, the question is, how do you prepare well? Well, you want to make sure, number 1, you understand your cost. Cost not only deals with money, but it also deals with time, right? The amount of money you're going to spend for your project will always be higher than the amount of money you intended for. So don't think because you allocated $50,000 for a project, you're going to spend $50,000. If you do, you've done really good. Or even if you spend lower than the amount, you've done really well. But in most cases, and probably I can reasonably assume, over 50% of all cases, you're going to spend way more than that amount. Also, giving money to the wrong people to do your projects. So essentially, you're hiring the wrong people. Now, the way to hire folks for your project is to hire experts that are good at their craft. Experts in flooring, experts in tiling, experts in plumbing, electrical, roofing, whatever the case may be. Do not hire a guy who can do a jack of all trades, because the work will not come out correctly. Okay, nonetheless, starting out fixing and flipping a house as a beginner is not a good path to start. I would suggest 2 things to go about doing this properly. Number 1, you really want to work with someone or a company that's fixing and flipping houses successfully. You want to understand the process of what they do. You want to understand the numbers of how they buy and the costs that go into buying each home. You want to understand how much money they're spending in renovations. You want to understand how much profit they made after they sold the house. You want to understand the brokers they're using and why they're using these brokers. Just by going through this process for a year, maybe even 2 years as an apprentice, even if you don't get paid, it will help you out tremendously. If you do get paid by being an apprentice working for a company, good for you. But the main key is to learn as much as you possibly can working for a professional in the fix and flip business. And the second way, which is what we're going to describe today, is to mainly buy a house using a FHA loan or a conventional loan. Why? It will give you good experience when buying a house. Also, after you buy this house, it will give you great experience into buying another house that you can actually renovate and sell. Not saying that you can't renovate this house and sell it, but that wouldn't be the ideal purpose. It's just to get your feet wet so you know what you're doing. So we're going to discuss some of the things you can do to qualify for FHA. No matter who you are, what position you are in life, this video is going to help you qualify. FHA is easy. It's too easy. It's too easy. You can qualify. Anybody can qualify for FHA. Another thing is, if you can't successfully buy a home with FHA or a conventional loan, then what makes you think you're going to successfully fix and flip a house successfully? That has way more steps, that has a lot more demands on your time. Okay, so it's good to do things in steps or have some sort of progression as to how you go about your business. Number 1, you want to assess your personal financial situation first. You have to look at a couple of key things to see if you qualify for FHA. The first thing you got to do is look at what they call life changes. And what are life changes? Did you get a divorce? Do you have kids? Are you recently married? Did you just move into an apartment? Are you changing jobs? Assess where you're at financially in terms of your life changes. Number two, the way to qualify for FHA, there are some key things to do. Number one, your credit score has to be 500 or better. My suggestion is to get your credit score to at least a 700. Why? Because the interest rates are lower the higher your credit score. The interest rates are higher the lower your credit score. So you will save a ton of money by having a higher credit score. Now, if this takes you another 6 months to a year to get your credit score higher, be patient and do it. Your debt to income ratio must be less than 57%. We'll discuss debt to income ratio in a bit. You will need to be able to put down anywhere from 3.5% to 10% for a down payment. You need to show pay stubs that you work. If you don't have pay stubs, you can still use your end of year taxes. Now, the sweet spot for me to show your taxes is at least $30,000, maybe even $40,000. The home must be a primary residence. This means that you must live inside the home to qualify. You can get anywhere from one apartment or one home up to 4 units. So you can live in one apartment and rent out the other 3 units, or if you want to go for a 3-family, you can, a 2-family, you can. The goal is you just have to be able to live in one apartment in order to qualify. The last thing with this first point is that before you buy your house through FHA or using a conventional loan, you want to make sure you have at least 1 year of emergency funds set up, because when you buy your house, there may be other things in the house that you did not foresee. So having those funds ready. You may lose your job. You may have a health benefit you have to pay. Not having any money saved is a bad recipe for failure. Always have at least 1 year of savings for an emergency plan. As we dive into the second reason, you have to see what you can afford. Now, how do you do this? You base it on your income that you make every single month. So you take the gross amount. Now, what is the gross amount? That means before any deductions, before any taxes, before any Social Security, 401k, any of that stuff. What you got to do is multiply that number, the gross amount, again, before any deductions, by 28%. Now, I don't know where they came up with this number of 28%. But essentially, this is what all lenders look at to determine if you can afford this house. This is what they call the housing expense ratio. This housing expense ratio takes up all the expenses it takes to operate a house. What are these expenses? Mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, even homeowners insurance, FOA fees, things of that sort. Nothing dealing with personal credit or personal phone bills. None of that stuff is in this formula. This is what they call the housing expense ratio. So let's say you have $4,000 that you make gross every single month. Again, before any deductions. You multiply that number by 0.28%. That gives you $1,120. You have this is the amount of money that you can afford to purchase a house with. Now, once you are looking for a house, you need to use this number as a metric that will help you determine the price that you could pay for a house. In this case, if you make $1,120, it means that you will be able to afford a house that's $120,000 on average. The main thing is to make sure that when you start looking for a house, you're looking for a house in your price range. So you'll need to identify an area that has that price range of what you can afford per month. Now, it may vary, the housing expense ratio may vary because you need to input the new housing expense that you will have when you buy the house into this formula. So it's good to do that as well. Okay, number 2, you want to calculate your debt to income ratio. What is this? So you're going to add up all your monthly debt expenses or debt payments. That's pretty much everything. Anything you got to pay, practically housing expense ratio plus cars, credit cards, everything. Add it all up. And you're going to divide this number by your gross monthly payment. So let's say your gross monthly payment is still $4,000. That number should be no higher than 57%, meaning that it should be less than 57%. Now you have two things going for you. You have your housing expense ratio that can give you a good idea as to what you can afford and in the market that you can afford. Essentially, you will go to Zillow, type in the neighborhood you're looking at, and see if you click on a house, and then you see if that house has the monthly mortgage payment in there. And they'll give you that number in Zillow. And if your house that you just picked, that number is higher than what you can afford when you've done your housing expense ratio, then that's not a good house for you. Also, check that debt to income ratio. It's really important. The banks won't give you the money unless you have a debt to income ratio of 57% or less. Okay, number 3. You really want to keep your renovation budget low. Now here's the core of the video here. The problem is that when you buy a house with FHA, they want the house to be renovated. So you won't have any issues with renovating the house. The house is already going to be renovated. Now, the thing is, I would just prepare a little bit of money on the side just in case you want to renovate some kitchen or renovate, maybe put some floors down. You may not like the floors, or maybe you want to paint. But you shouldn't do any of that work. Stay away from renovations when doing your FHA. They have these 203K loans whereby they'll give you the construction money and give you the money to purchase the house. Stay far away from those types of loans. Why? Because you don't know how to renovate. I mean, no offense to you, but you don't know how to renovate a house. You don't know the process that goes into that. Trust me, when you buy your house, you're going to come across a lot of issues. It's going to teach you how to renovate. It's going to teach you how to do it. So you can also look for a home that is 15% below market value. Maybe 10%, maybe 20%, but you just want to just make sure you get some discount on the sale. And if you can't get it, so what? Just buy it, make sure the numbers make sense, and you'll be well on your way. But in any event, this is how to do it successfully. Until the next time, take care.